Aloha and welcome to All About Adoption. My name is Christine Altwies, and today we are going to be talking about surrogacy. And with me is a very special guest. Welcome, Jamie.
Thank you.
Full disclosure, Jamie is an employee of Hawaii International Child, our organization. She runs the surrogacy program. But we're going to be speaking about surrogacy in general today, not about the HIC program necessarily, but about surrogacy, A to Z, intro to surrogacy to help folks understand what it is. So what is surrogacy?
Great. Just start right away. Surrogacy is a very personal service that women offer families who have many times been through infertility or other failed attempts to grow their family, and they offer this service to help them have a child.
So how does it work?
Well, typically a potential surrogate, somebody, a woman who is interested in becoming a surrogate, contacts an agency and goes through their specific application requirements in order to become a surrogate. And same thing on the intended parent side as well, if there are parents who are looking to find a surrogate, and so they get in touch with an agency and start working through that application process as well.
So does surrogacy have to involve an agency, or can there be private surrogate situations?
Absolutely. It can be private as well. Sometimes another family member will offer to help a family, a sister or a cousin or something like that. So it can certainly be private. An agency can be very helpful in that it helps kind of coordinate all of those not so touchy-feely pieces of surrogacy that you might want to have in place throughout the process. So sometimes it is helpful to have a third party, but not a requirement.
Not legally required.
Correct.
Okay. All right, so who are the surrogates? Why would somebody decide to become a surrogate?
Yeah. Well, there are two different types of surrogates. So you have traditional surrogates and gestational surrogates. So a traditional surrogate, the egg of the surrogate is used, so they are genetically related to the child. And then typically, for the most part, you see gestational surrogacy, especially if you're working through an agency. Gestational surrogacy is when the fertility clinic will implant an embryo into the surrogate, and they have no genetic relation to the child. So the types of women who do this are just women who love their own families, love their children, very family-oriented, and want to help another family.
Okay, so how can a potential family, is that what you'd call them, a prospective family?
A potential family we would call intended parents.
Okay, intended parents. So how would the intended parents feel assured that the surrogate they're using is going to do what they want and need? I mean, it's I imagine a very emotional process, a very scary process.
Right.
How can the intended parents be assured that their surrogate is going to be a good match for them?
So both sides, the intended parents and the gestational carriers or surrogates, whatever term you'd like to use, both sides have to go through intense screening. So that includes child abuse and neglect clearances, criminal clearances, medical clearances to ensure both sides are healthy. Especially the surrogate also goes through a fertility clearance, psychological screenings. Typical to adoption in that sense, that we really, vet each side to make sure that it's a responsible decision for both sides of the arrangement. And then also just taking really good care with the matching process, because at the end of the day, it's a human relationship. And so, having and kind of cultivating a really respectful relationship between the carrier and the intended parents is very, very important.
Yeah, I can imagine that. And with the surrogate, how do we ensure that she's not going to become attached to her baby?
Well, I think that the biggest piece of becoming a surrogate is that many times, these women are typically required to have had a child of their own and be raising that child, so they know what it's like. and they don't view it as their own child. They view it as helping another family. So oftentimes, you know, depending on their value system, they are very respectful of certain medical screenings or, you know, intended parents' decision on how to handle the pregnancy, you know, within reason. But so the whole viewpoint is really kind of a long-term babysitter, you know, helping another family. This is not their child. And while there is, you know, the opportunity to become attached, at the end of the day, they're very respectful of the intended parents and helping that family.
Okay, and so you mentioned that for the purposes of an agency-managed surrogate situation, the surrogate mother would have to have already been pregnant and raised a child, so there's that assurance. And then
Right.
would her own DNA ever be used in an agency surrogacy situation, or would it always be the egg and the sperm, the embryo of the intended parents?
Not typically. It might depend on the agency. Typically, agencies only do gestational surrogacy for that very reason of bonding and having that genetic connection, and to alleviate that a little bit.
Okay, so if a couple wants to have a child this way, but they don't have, let's say his sperm isn't working, her eggs are not available, does that family still have options?
Absolutely, many options.
Okay.
Embryo adoption is an option where you would get matched with an already created embryo. You also have the option to pursue sperm donation or egg donation.
Okay.
So multiple options that they could pursue in order to utilize a surrogate or carry a pregnancy themselves.
All right, so speaking about the surrogates, I think you said you had a clip to show.
Yes, we do. This is a video of a woman in Hawaii, and just a wonderful woman that is considering surrogacy.
Great. So maybe we don't have that clip. While we try and get the clip, let's talk a little bit more about the intended parents. So who are the intended parents in a surrogate situation? What would bring someone to the table to try and pursue a surrogate?
Many times the families have been through infertility, which can take many, many years, and is very emotionally taxing. A lot of times they've considered adoption, and for whatever reason they did not feel that was the right fit for them, or they had you know, not so great experiences with that. And so they really have been through a lot to grow their family. So the intended parents are people who really, really want to parent and you know, have the ability to kind of pursue an arrangement like surrogacy.
It's possible, though, that if they've already adopted or given birth, they would still maybe want to pursue surrogacy.
Right.
So they're not prohibited from doing that if they already have children.
Absolutely.
Okay. So if somebody were to be critical of surrogacy, for example, we often hear, there are so many orphans in the world. Why would you go to the time and expense of creating a child this way when there are orphans who need families?
Right.
What would you say to that?
Well, I think family building and growing your own personal family looks different for everybody. And at the end of the day, I think that it's more of a discussion around reproductive rights and having the ability to access different ways of growing your family. You know, sometimes surrogacy isn't right for a family, and sometimes adoption isn't right for a family, and it really depends on that relationship and kind of the climate of that family. And so I think it's really important to acknowledge that and to respect that.
Right, okay. So I think what you're saying is that not everyone may be set up to take in an orphan who would have the needs that come along with adopting an orphan, or may want to experience pregnancy. And I think we were talking earlier, and you mentioned that being involved in a surrogate situation for the intended mother, let's say the intended mother is unable to become pregnant, even though it's not her own pregnancy happening to her own body, she can sort of live vicariously through her surrogate if they have a close relationship. Can you say a little bit more about that and what your
Sure.
experience is with those kinds of relationships?
Yeah, so the surrogate and intended parents relationship kind of looks different for everybody. But we do have some women and intended parents, specifically the intended mothers, a lot of times that do want to be involved in that process and that do want to be able to attend doctor's appointments and to hear the first heartbeat, to be there when the sex is revealed. And those are things that in adoption you don't necessarily get to be a part of. So if an intended parent feels strongly about that, then surrogacy might be a good option for them to get involved with the pregnancy process and the birthing process of their child.
Right. I imagine, especially if the surrogate situation is using the DNA of, or the eggs, for example, of the intended mother, then she's even more closely connected through that DNA link.
Right, right. Yeah, I mean, I think a big piece of that, I mean, regardless of that DNA link, I think it's really neat to see your child grow and to be a part of that process if you're not able to carry yourself, which is, pretty excruciating for some women. So to be able to be a part of it kind of from start to finish is, something really special.
How do parents who have and raise and love children who come to them through a surrogate process, how do they help their children grow up with an understanding of how they came into the world? Is there any connection between how we raise children who are adopted and how we raise children who come to us through surrogacy?
Absolutely. I mean, I think at the core, you don't want them to ever have shame surrounding where they came from
So
and
they
their
know.
birth story. So disclosure, borrowing a little bit from best practices in adoption, since organized adoption has been around for a lot longer than organized surrogacy arrangements. Borrowing that best practice piece of early disclosure and open, honest conversations with your children that are age appropriate is also something that's advocated in the world of surrogacy as well, and it really goes back to the children not feeling any shame about where they came from and knowing that, all of these people loved them so much that they did, all of these things to get them here. And here's how you were created. And so that really can, give the child confidence into adulthood of where they came from and their entire creation story.
So let's talk a little bit more about that, because I'm curious if you are, let's say you're the parents and your embryo is used, let's say it's a full mom, dad, sperm and egg, creates the embryo, a surrogate mother carries the child. So I could hear parents saying, well, maybe I don't need to tell my child because the child is my full DNA.
Right.
This is our child emotionally as well as physiologically, genetically. Why would we introduce this challenge or this potential trauma or confusion for our child? What would you say to a couple like that who maybe is hesitant to tell their child that the child came from a surrogate?
Well, originally, alternative reproductive techniques were kind of encouraged to be kept private. And over time, they saw how that affected trust between the parents and the child, especially into adolescence and early adulthood, if they didn't know their birth story and there weren't any pictures of, their mother pregnant. And that naturally is going to create some questions for the child that are unanswered for a very, very long time until possibly in adulthood and they receive this information, and that really can be very damaging to a parent-child relationship of the secrecy piece and the shame piece, and I think acknowledging that early on is very important because then it's always a part of their life and it's nothing to be ashamed of. It's many times something to be celebrated, and they're knowledgeable about it, particularly if other family members know or close family friends know and they don't know. It can be really detrimental.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point. So what you're saying is it's almost literally impossible to keep a secret from a child if the secret pertains to that child's origin or history
Right.
forever. At some point, that secret is going to come out, and when it does, the relationship can be possibly permanently damaged. That
Right.
trust can be irrevocably broken, and then what do you have?
Right.
So, and this is a new phenomenon. It sounds like you're saying that in the ART field, folks are just starting to get a little more assertive about helping their families with this educational piece.
Right. Well, and I think that relationship, somewhat with adoption and that partnering between ART and the adoption field, you see striking similarities in that relationship between parent and child. And so, in adoption, the encouragement to disclose their origins is extremely important to their development and confidence in who they are and where they come from. So, taking that and applying it to a surrogacy situation or, any alternative reproductive situation can be really positive.
Yeah. But I'm eager to show one of your videos. Let's just see one more time if we can show a video, and we'll wait a second or two, and if we can't show the video, then we'll move on.
One thing I love about growing up here is just the family support you have. Like, I wouldn't be able to have my kids if I didn't have the support I have behind me. Going back to school was a good option for me. My son just turned 1, and it was either go back to work or finish my education. My children, they motivate me to finish it. I researched surrogacy a bit in college, but it didn't really hit me until I had a really good pregnancy, I had a really good birth, and after that I experienced the wonderful thing of motherhood. And then I was thinking oh, this would be an awesome thing to do for somebody else, like for somebody who can't have kids. I want to be a part of that creation of happiness for someone. That happiness, that inside of me to be transferred to somebody else, to feel that same way. What I would tell somebody if they're interested in becoming a surrogate mother would be, it's a selfless act. Going through this process, I already know the baby's not mine. So I'm just a carrier, and then to present them with a gift, like a gift of love.
That's great. So can you say a little bit more about that video? I guess that's a surrogate mom.
I think that gives a really good depiction of what a surrogate can be and the reasons for being a surrogate for another family, and just, loving their own children so much that they want to help another family have that experience.
So would you say that these surrogate moms really are sort of professionals, and this is their career, this is their job?
Sometimes they do have careers outside of being a surrogate, desk jobs or whatever it may be. So it is important to acknowledge that. And then sometimes, we have military spouses that want to help contribute financially to their family while helping another family, stay-at-home moms, things like that. So it looks different for every woman, but I would say, truthfully, the main reasons for doing it are very similar for many women.
The desire to give the gift of
Right.
a child to a family who really, really wants and can't have. It sounds like then, for the predominance of these cases, in surrogate situations, the family who is trying to start a family, who wants to become parents, most of them don't already have children. Would you say that's usually the case?
Some do and some don't. It really depends. We have some families that did adopt and also have biological children. So it really depends. I would say the majority of intended parents are childless, and like I said, have just been through a lot to try to get one child in their family.
So in those cases, this is an extremely important relationship and a total win-win if the surrogate mom really is in this for the reasons of wanting to help someone. This is one of the most amazing gifts you can ever give.
Right.
Is there anything else we can know about the surrogates that you can share with us? I think you had another clip. I'm not sure if we
If
can.
you had asked me when I was 3 or 4 or 5 years old, you know, what do you want to be when you grow up? My answer has always been, I want to be a mom. I am a mother of 4 beautiful daughters. I am married to my high school sweetheart. I have been a surrogate for one amazing family and am currently pregnant with my second surrogate child. Pregnancy's always been fun, and it's always been something that I look forward to. I've never had any complications to speak of that weren't minor and you get over them quickly and everything turns out beautifully. My girls, they have really felt that they are part of this experience with me. The very first time we told them that I was a surrogate, they quickly understood the concept of surrogacy, that this child is not ours and that it is a baby that we're going to help another family bring into this world. My oldest daughter at the time was 8, and she said, "Mom, when you grow up, you're going to be such a good person." I look at the outcome of pregnancy as this beautiful child that's been created, and that payoff is so much more worth the little inconveniences of life that pregnancy does bring. The joys and the blessings that surrogacy has brought to me and my own family has been equally as amazing as the gift that I know I'm providing to someone else. And I think that's the thing that makes it so worthwhile.
I remember that's a clip of a family who has a lot of kids at home. Can you tell us a little bit about that surrogate mom and why that's a slightly different situation?
Yeah, I mean, she was super open with, she has all girls, and very open with the whole process of pregnancy, and that mommy was carrying a child for another family that wasn't able to do so. And it's just so neat to see that kind of openness within a family as well, and the support from her husband is really inspiring. And you know, she is in the educational field, and so she has this real love for children, and especially for her own girls. And so she very much so understood the want and the rewarding pieces of being a parent.
What about the rights of surrogate parents? If you're an intended parent and you want to do this and you're maybe a little concerned, you don't want to take advantage of someone else, how can we be assured that a surrogate mom is being taken care of, I guess, because she is giving up so much and it is such a large sacrifice? What can we tell people about the process of being a surrogate mom in terms of how an agency would support her and what she would get out of it?
Well, a lot of times an agency offers counseling throughout the process because it can be emotionally challenging at times. So that counseling piece and that open communication with kind of a neutral third party is really important. Again, I can't stress enough just that relationship piece and that mutual respect for one another. You know, we find that kind of, you have that contract, and that is really, really important, but that relationship piece is just crucial to the entire process and what you want it to look like.
So the surrogate mom is compensated financially.
Correct.
Okay, and can you tell us anything else about that? Sort of, are there other payments? Are payments attached to certain? What does the payment piece look like, I guess?
So typically you have a base fee, and then you'll have an amount for, you know, a clothing allowance. You have all of, you know, you will be reimbursed for every single payment that you make, if you do make any. You get a fee for the transfer. If you know, anything were to happen medically, you would be compensated for that as well. A bed rest allowance. There's a whole list of different pieces of compensation, and then that's handled through a third-party escrow company. So there's no money exchanging hands between the agency and you know, both parties.
Okay, so the intended parents don't have to show up with a checkbook and pay the surrogate mom themselves. That's sort of handled by someone else, so they can enjoy their relationship and everything set up ahead of time. And I guess the encouraging piece for anyone who would be worrying or wondering is that the surrogate mom is obviously in it for the reasons of helping someone, because there's no amount of money that could, if you don't like being pregnant, there's no amount of money that
Right.
could incite you to become pregnant or to want to do this, right? So they're probably not in it for the money necessarily, but there is money that helps them
Right.
with the discomfort and the inconvenience, and that makes it worth their while financially.
Right. You know, it's really rewarding when you do see a relationship between a surrogate and a set of intended parents kind of extend that time frame, you know, that 9 to 10 month time frame, and have that relationship, have that longevity over time, and possibly be, you know, a part of that child's life as well, and know the person that helped them come into the world.
Seems like that would be a great thing to aim for if everyone gets along and can maintain that, because the
Right.
child benefits having more people, like you said, who love
Right.
him or her. Is there ever any confusion on the part of the child? This is my surrogate mom, this is my mom, this is my dad. How do children handle that piece?
Right. Well, and I think that that's where you really need to be aware of, you know, developmentally where they are, and having age-appropriate conversations. There are a lot of resources out there, you know, picture books and things like that to aid in that conversation, and that can be extremely helpful if you don't know how to explain, you know, such a, at times, complicated process to such a young child. And so that open communication is really important, but also age appropriate.
Great. So it sounds like it's sort of, surrogacy is part of our brave new world of family building, with children coming to different types of families through different avenues, all sorts of ways nowadays. And the bottom line is, as long as everyone's rights are being respected, I guess, and it sounds like they are,
Right.
children are being cared for, best interest of the child is considered when matching and when looking at who's who. Relationships are handled transparently. Ethical guidelines are being observed. Okay, we have about a minute left. If there's any final thought you want to share with us about, for the people watching, are surrogates being sought? If someone were interested in becoming a surrogate
Yes.
or having a family through surrogacy, would you encourage them to start the process?
Absolutely. The beginning of the process, you know, is a lot of talking and just, you know, getting comfortable with the idea. And I think that it's extremely important to, if you are interested and you do feel compelled to help another family, to get that process going. And it's a really exciting, wonderful journey for people. Yeah.
Well, thank you for being here.
Thank
I'm
you.
sure you've taught all of us something that might be new thinking for a lot of the watchers. So thank you for being
you.
here. This has been All About Adoption. I'm Christine Altwies. Thanks to Olelo Media and our producer, Christine Castignero. We'll see you next time. Aloha.
About this feels like home. Something about you I already know. Something about this deep in my soul tells me you're my favorite.